guys, John here from Moon Design. I wanted to look at this Strava logo, and I was running the other day and I used Strava and I love it. And I noticed this and I wanted to talk about it. And not because there's some great problem with the Strava logo, because there isn't. And I don't particularly like, taking apart other people's logos because, it could just as well be done to yours as well, mine. So this is primarily about that there is a visual problem here. And what's instructive about it is that there's a few tools that when you run into this problem that you can use a couple of visual options that you can use to solve this problem. And that's what's interesting here. So here's the Strava logo, and the problem here is there at the intersection or right where the S meets the T. And the problem with it is that it's very active. It's very high in visual hierarchy. Anytime you have something near an edge of something else, the edge of a paper or the edge of another form, it rises in visual hierarchy. That is, it draws your attention to a very high degree. And this is out of step with the visual language and the visual languages patterns that have already been established. So if you notice how the forms meet in this logo, you have these over here, this visual language, this visual tool, and that is that when you have forms meet, they meet in parallel lines. So you have two parallel faces that meet. And so that's one visual language of how these forms connect. The other one is that you connect these. And when we get back to the S and the T, neither of these two visual languages is used here. And it's a completely different one. And it's one that's very high in visual hierarchy. And so that's where the problem is. Now, how do you go about solving this problem? Well, there's three main tools to solve this problem. The first one is what I call the parallel tool here. And well, before I get into this, with most designs, you have problems of diversity and problems of unity. So if something is too diverse, then that means there's too many visual tools, too many visual languages going on, and you typically want to have just a few. But then there's the problem of unity. There's not enough diversity. There's not enough interest. So here, all of these tools are just going to say, hey, let's resolve this in a way that's already been used in this logo. Let's use one of the languages that's already currently spoken. So we saw that those parallel lines is already one of the visual languages, and so we can just make it like that. So we just modify the letter form of the S to move it up, and then we have to kern it in so that the closest form of this, that the relationship between the T and the R, becomes the same. So we just pop it in like that. So that's one option. Now, here it's not a great option because of the distinctiveness of the S shape. It makes it uncomfortable. And so I don't think this is the best option. But once again, this is not about the Strava logo. This is when you have this kind of problem. This is one tool. And the tool here is these make it parallel. That is, speak a similar visual language. And here that means modifying the letter forms so that there's fewer languages being spoken. Okay, so that's the first technique. The second technique is to connect them. And that's because between the R and the A, one of the languages is to connect the letter form. So we start out with modifying that letter form so it can connect nicely, and then we just pop it together. Once again, for this logo, it's not great. And that's because it creates this long shape that goes from the S through the T. And that's kind of a foreign visual form here, to have a very long form. It draws attention in a way that I don't think the designers wanted, because they wanted to draw attention to the back of the logo, the AVA, because they also use especially the A and the V stacked on top of each other as a logo mark, and they've kerned it, widened it up more to draw your attention there. So they really want the attention to be drawn right after the logo as a whole to the back part about it. And so this creates a hierarchy that's not wanted. But once again, this is another tool that you have at your disposal. Second to last one is to stroke the letter forms, or to put white, for instance, between these. And right there, do you see I just cut it off? So you have this sharp interaction between the S and the T. And if you just put a white stroke on that T, then all of a sudden it softens that interaction. It makes the relationship between the negative space of the T and the R as the same as the T and the S. And so it softens that. Now, this is not a great option for this logo. It's not good. But once again, this is about learning about the tools that you have when you have this kind of problematic interaction. And this is one of them. And this works great on a lot of logos, where you're taking that very sharp, very attention-grabbing relationship and you're softening it. Now, of course, this typeface, whatever it is, it's something like Gotham or something, is very sharp, and that's one of its characteristics. And so to modify the letter forms in this way would not be appropriate. But perhaps in another logo, that would be appropriate. So the last option, and here we have our logo like it normally is just to kern it. And this seems so obvious, but I think it's the best option. You see, you open it up here, and the further you move the S away from the T, the less of an interaction there's going to be. And so it's moving it down in visual hierarchy. It's drawing your attention less, which is exactly what we want. And I think this is the best option for the logo. So were the original designers thinking? What was there? Because, you never want to assume that you know everything and you know how to fix every logo and you're sort of a design master. So we want to be gracious to the designers and just assume that they're better designers than we are and try to think about why they made the decisions that they made. My guess why they made this decision is because this typeface has a lot of sharp features. And so you have the peaks of this A, the V, and the A, not to mention the sharp parts of them. And so because this is part of the visual language of the typeface, is that they said, well, this sharp interaction can work here. Now, the reason I don't think that's true is because these sharp parts of the type don't interact with any other shape. They interact with negative space. And so the reaction between the S and the T is two letter forms, one flat and one pointed, interacting. So I think it's a different kind of visual language, not similar to these, but that's just a guess. I hope that's helpful for you. I hope you learned some techniques for solving this visual problem. And I'll talk to you later. Thanks.